Yeah, nice change.
I'm hitting live.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. We are just preparing ourselves.
I'm sending the tweet out. It is sent.
Yeah, nice change. I'm hitting live.
Look at us in 1080.
I know, it looks so beautiful.
Who would have thought of it?
All right.
Still using the Brio. I have
Yeah,
to.
me too. I like the
All right.
Brio.
Oh, let me retweet.
I guess I'll retweet as well.
Okay, let me hit the voice recorder. Bring up the notes. All right, I am ready and now recording.
I am now recording as well.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Zach, you gotta do it over again.
Why?
You have noise canceling on.
Oh.
I didn't hear you clap.
Oh no, my noise cancelling is not on the voice recorder. It should be fine.
Okay. Well, let's start over again then.
Okay.
All right, now recording.
Me too. I'm recording as well.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 216 for March 12th, 2021. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk all things Microsoft Surface, Xbox, gaming, PCs, and anything else that's happened in the exciting world of technology. This week we're going to be talking briefly about the Harman Kardon Invoke plus Cortana finally getting murdered, which would be a fun little story, as people love talking about Cortana dying for some reason. You guys are all sick. Then we'll talk about rumors of Surface Laptop 4 specifications, which will make everybody super happy. Of course, I'm kidding. Some people will be very disappointed, but that's okay. Then we'll talk about another rumor, which is the Surface webcam, which I would actually say is a little bit overdue, but still sort of interesting. Zach will share with us some Windows 10 news and updates that happened this week. Some Xbox stuff, including Bethesda games, 20 of them joining the Xbox Game Pass. We'll also talk about a story that Jez Corden did talking about Microsoft's big ZeniMax deal and basically what it means to Xbox and why it's going to be kind of a big deal for the console and Xbox going forward. I'll also talk a little bit about some Halo news, which I'll gladly let Zach talk about, as it actually is kind of cool stuff. And then I'll briefly touch upon a PC review a PC review I did this week, which was the Dell XPS 8940 SE Special Edition. So this is a desktop PC, which is, kind of not something I typically do. I'm trying to do a little bit more. It seems like people appreciate these because, as I've mentioned previously, not everybody likes to go out and build their own PCs. It's a fun adventure in your 20s, in your 30s. You're lucky if you can find the time. And when you hit your 40s, you're like, nope, I'm just going to give you my money. Give me a quality product. And then you want to know, is this a quality product? So we'll talk a little bit about that and the pros and cons there. Zach, I should also mention before we get started here, I am this week on a new microphone. This is the same microphone Zach is using, though slightly different. So this is the HyperX Quadcast S. And if you're watching the video, you'll be noticing the beautiful colors, the hypnotic. This is like a 2020-21 modern lava lamp, I like to think of it as. Anyway, so if the sound quality sounds different or better, let me know. It's not perfectly set up just because the front of the microphone is technically on my left side here. And so it is set to Omni pickup, but we still need to figure out how to orientate it. And I don't have the pop filter that Zach has. So we're not 100% there. So tune in next week if it sounds a little bit better.
This is a hard science problem.
It really is. Like, you got to find all these little parts, how to mount it, all this kind of stuff. But it is an awesome microphone.
Yeah.
It's USB We do have a review of the Quadcast, the regular one that Zach has,
Yep.
on Windows Central. I'll probably be revisiting the Quadcast S in the coming weeks. The beauty of it is, of course, you can just tap the top part, and I'll do it here.
And now he's muted.
Yeah, and it mutes and it turns the light off, which is kind of nice. But it's a beautifully designed microphone.
Yeah, so I think the main difference between mine and yours is obviously yours has RGB, mine simply has just the standard red light. And also yours has those different... Oh no, mine has it as well. I did not realize mine has the dial, which changes the different sort of listening modes. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
The more you learn. So, but yeah, kind of cool stuff. Anyway, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday here?
I'm not too bad. Real quick, breaking news, quite literally. Microsoft has announced that Edge will be joining Chrome in its new major release cadence. So for those who are unaware, Google announced a few weeks ago that it would be moving Chrome Stable to a new 4-week major release cycle, which was cutting back by 2 weeks, as usually it's every 6 weeks. That's what Edge has been for Stable. Every 6 weeks is a new version. Microsoft has just announced that Edge Stable will now be joining Chrome with 4 weeks of major updates, so cutting back by 2 weeks for Edge as well, which is good. But they're also announcing a extended stable option, which will be 8 weeks. So I guess this is for enterprises or people who aren't really too keen on updates. You can actually choose to stay on a stable release for an extra 2 weeks now. So going from 6 to 8 weeks rather than going down to 4 weeks. So I figured I'd just quickly mention that because that was literally news that they just announced.
That is pretty interesting there.
Yeah. I'm happy about that because I'm one of those people who doesn't use the beta or dev channels or canary of Edge. I use stable because I'm just lazy. And I always see these new people talk about these new features. Oh yeah, there's new like tabs on the side, or like these new tab previews, or this new collections feature, or tabs from other devices are here. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I wish I could use that. And then I have to wait like 12 weeks for it to go from dev to beta to developer to public. So now I have to only wait 4 weeks, which is nice.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, Edge, and we'll be talking a little bit about some Edge news. Edge is increasingly... Windows is the platform, but Edge is becoming the platform. You actually had a funny tweet a couple weeks ago about that, which I thought was brilliant. But the innovation, the progress, the features, the cadences of Edge is actually really fascinating. And it makes sense. I've shared before numbers that Microsoft told me kind of off the record, which is 50 to 60% of Windows usage is in the browser. And I look at my own usage, I consider myself kind of a power user, at least in my field, right? I'm not like video editing as a power user, for instance.
Yeah.
But in my field, man, I'm in the browser all the time. I share a tweet. I installed an extension you can get for free called Tab Count for Edge. And it's simply, Zach and I always kind of joke about this, about the amount of open tabs I have because I'm a tab monster. Like I'll have sometimes 130
it's
tabs
insane
open.
To me. It's crazy.
It's because I do research. I do the research, as the internet likes to say. So I had to put a tab counter on there just to see how insane I was. But with all the features that are coming out, stuff like that, it really is. I think this has been a great move, and the team, shout out to the Edge team. They really have a good gang there right now in terms of they're delivering features. They're doing creative stuff, right? That this isn't a Chrome browser. It's Chrome based, of course. Yeah. But if you compare the features in this browser to what Chrome does, there's some really unique stuff in Edge, things that I never would have thought of that they're bringing as features. And we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. But it's just kind of cool to see all that happening. So
I will say that I'm still not too keen on the UI. I still think they could do more to differentiate it from Chrome. Because I'll sometimes look at a screenshot of Chrome and think, is that Edge? Oh, no, it's Chrome. Because you can tell because Chrome is more rounded, believe it or not, in like things with buttons in the address bar. But
true, yeah.
But other than that, they're basically the same looking browser. Obviously, Edge differentiates from a features perspective, but from a UI perspective, they're very similar. And I do wish Microsoft would do more to change that. But oh well.
We'll put that in the user request. Can't use user voice though. That's actually a little bit of news. We'll just mention it in a sentence because it's hardly exciting. But user voice was a bunch of forums that people would use to talk to Microsoft and give features and report bugs. And apparently, Microsoft is quote unquote moving away from user voice. Not sure necessarily why. They've gone through years of shifting how you give feedback. We still don't know how to give feedback on Surface Duo, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the news, though, going through some of the major stories. Harman Kardon Invoke is finally losing Cortana. So
the day's been coming.
This is like a double DOA story for a lot of people anyway, because not a lot of people bought the Harman Kardon Invoke, which is a bit of a shame because hardware-wise, Harman Kardon did a brilliant job. It's a really good microphone. The audio is fantastic on it. And even the little light up LED Cortana thing looks really neat. Like, you can't blame them for not trying or not doing a good job creating a speaker.
As always, it's Microsoft's fault that this is a product that's
it was just too late, right? They entered this market way too late. Like, I mean, that market is so saturated / defined at this point. Apple is having a hard time making headway into it. Don't forget, Apple actually has speakers now, right, that are smart and all this. But when was the last time, you saw people recommending that even? Right. I think hardcore Apple fans who are really in the ecosystem will use it. But, when it comes up to like holiday gifts, everybody goes Amazon Echo. Yeah. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
And then if like you bought an Android phone, maybe you'll get a Google Dot, whatever they're called. Did they still throw those in the box, for free?
Yeah.
But it's really Amazon's world at this point. So, but fill in the details here. But what's happening with Cortana?
Sure. So obviously, Cortana, Microsoft has repositioned Cortana quite significantly. Originally, it was this obviously standard virtual assistant that was competing alongside Siri and Google Assistant. But over time, Microsoft has repositioned it as a productivity assistant. So it's sort of scaled it back. It's really only found on Windows 10 and inside Microsoft 365 now. There's no mobile apps. There's obviously no dedicated speaker support anymore. And the update this week for the Harman Kardon Invoke, which is rolling out now, simply removes Cortana and turns the smart speaker into a dumb Bluetooth speaker, essentially. So there's no more voice activation or connecting services to it. You simply turn it on, and there's the Bluetooth connect button on the back, and you pair it, and you're good to go. It's a real shame, and obviously, if you did pay full price for a Harman Kardon Invoke, that's quite the rip-off, which is why Microsoft were, and I think maybe still are, offering like $50 gift cards, Microsoft Store gift cards for those who bought one. And have still been using. I think you have to have been using it actively in the last 6 months. They can tell if you have or haven't been. So,
yikes!
yeah, right. So the Invoke will automatically grab the update if it's already plugged in and connected to Wi-Fi, and you'll know that it's happened because when you tap the top, nothing happens. I think like a blue light just appears and that's it. There's no talking. Cortana doesn't give you a joke anymore. Cortana's essentially moved out. She's not there anymore. And that's basically it. Again, it's still a great speaker. The audio quality is the same. I saw a few people asking, why couldn't they have added Google Assistant or Alexa to it? And I'm sure from a technical perspective, it's possible. But Harman probably looked at the numbers and thought, too few people bought this for us to build a new sort of firmware for this with Google Assistant and Alexa built in. So they just didn't. And they instead ended up with this. So... I mean, I think it's good because it's with Bluetooth. I think some of the Echo devices do have Bluetooth support, so you can pair Bluetooth speakers to the Echoes now. So I'll try it out, and maybe you can actually sort of turn the Invoke into an Echo by doing that, which I think would be pretty nice.
Like a relay system?
Yeah, or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's but as you said, too few people bought these things to matter.
It's the Windows Phone situation again. Too few people were using it, so Microsoft killed it.
Yep. And that's it, right? I mean, there's really not much else to say about it. They were late to the market with this thing. Same with the thermostat. The thermostat was pretty wild. I still have it on my shelf. The missus of the house does not prefer that design. She prefers the Ecobee. Ecobee. She calls it the Ecobee, which is hilarious. She does on purpose. I'm like, it's an Ecobee. But, yeah, this is it's unfortunate now. A lot of people, of course, are going to say Cortana is dead, and on a consumer front, that's absolutely true. Of course, the technology behind Cortana, the AI, the system that it's accessing is not dead and is still being actively developed and being used elsewhere. Every time you use even a voice translate things or stuff in PowerPoints, of course, there's the Outlook stuff for the mail clients to read your emails. I think that's still around. I haven't even seen that in forever. Is that feature still there? That's a good question.
I assume so.
But it's like, so Cortana was always this weird front-facing public personality.
Yeah.
Back when, these clients, it was all about the personality at first. It was Siri versus Cortana versus
Google
whatever
Assistant.
Google called theirs, which is Assistant, right?
Yeah.
And never got a name. And now we've kind of moved away from that stuff as it just became sort of what they can do. But that said, that category is kind of interesting. Put aside Cortana, how far has like even the Google stuff, the Amazon stuff really evolved? I mean, my Echo, I do have an Echo, and it's kind of nice. Every once in a while, I'll ask something, and she'll be like, "Oh, I can. You don't need to say my name. You can just ask a question again. Would you like to enable that feature?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So they've gotten a little bit smart, but I can't say it's necessarily been like completely transformative. I still find the best features of these devices for myself is be like, remind me in X amount of time to do this, or set the alarm. Occasionally ask the weather, but it's not something we actively use here. But
yeah, I think the biggest breakthrough or the biggest advancement in the AI, in the virtual assistant space in recent times has been Google's Google Assistant and its ability to answer phone calls.
Duplex.
Yeah,
Google
that easily is like the most convenient feature of Google Assistant, and it's only exclusive to to Pixel phones. Sorry.
Yeah, and I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard
I'm
it
sure
going
it's not
down,
perfect. Yeah,
not working, and
of course, but that's to be expected, right? There's still like these aren't perfect systems, but the fact that it's a shipping thing that you can try it and it does work is incredible to me. Like Siri doesn't do that. Cortana would dream of doing something like that, and obviously Amazon can't do that because they don't have their own mobile platform. And Alexa. So I actually use Amazon's Assistant on my Duo as the default assistant, and it's not great. It's really not great.
I was gonna say that's a weird choice to.
Well, because I use it everywhere else. I figured I might as well use it on the bloody phone as well, but it's not great.
Yeah, the Google solution actually works pretty well on phone.
Yeah.
Like they each have their strengths, right?
Yeah,
Google is definitely good on Android phones. Siri's okay on the iPhone. I mean, in terms of the way it interacts and works is great on the iPhone. The results aren't necessarthen great, but they're the little triggers that you can do for each app is kind of neat, where you can kind of customize. Like app developers can build in things. But then you have Amazon. Amazon's really good for a speaker in your house. But as soon as you leave the house, like who's using that? Remember they tried that thing where you put it in your car? Like, I don't even know if that ever shipped. And then they try to do it with the glasses too. So
see. The biggest shame about Cortana for me is that it started off so strong. Like when it was announced and when it shipped, it was the best assistant out there. It had the most human voice because it was based on a real actress. Well, so was Siri, I think, but obviously based on Jen Taylor, who is a voice actress. And they I think they took her voice and actually it just sounded human. Like it sounded like a human voice. It had a personality. It had a bit of sass to it. Whereas Siri and Google Assistant at the time were very we are robots. We sound like robots. Yes. We are a robot virtual assistant. Whereas Cortana tried to add a sort of human element to it. And I think for the most part it worked. It also it pulled in your news and your weather and stuff and calendar events and whatnot, which is kind of what the news and interests widget kind of does on Windows 10 dev builds today. And it was really great, but then slowly over time, Apple kept working on Siri, Google kept working on Assistant, and Cortana got more features in Windows 8.1 and then sort of stagnated. And then throughout the development of Windows 10 and then and Windows 10 Mobile, of course, Cortana never really got any better. And
I loved it with Microsoft Band. Let's just go through the old hits, right?
Yeah, it was good on Band.
That was neat. But you're right, it did kind of peak then. But really, ultimately, what killed Cortana was the death of Windows Phone.
Yeah,
without a phone mobile stake in it. There was just no way to grow it. It's hard, even on, shoot, I have Amazon's, I'll just say because I don't want to keep repeating the name, voice assistant on my desktop PC through the app. Works okay. I use it once a week, maybe.
Yeah, I don't use it at
Voice
all.
assistants on PC don't make seemingly as much sense. Now, someone brought up in comments whether we could see Cortana return in terms of like, HoloLens, which it kind of already is there. So this is a good bigger discussion, which I don't think we'll do on this podcast right now, but about voice interaction models. So it's true in the sense that, as I was mentioning, Cortana as a public figure for their AI is not nearly as ubiquitous as it was a few years ago. As they continue down this route of different interaction models, including wearables and glasses, they will need a voice assistant to sort of handle that. So the work continues because this is AI, right? It's not just about a little robot thing on your phone or your computer. The AI, this goes because when you dig below what is Cortana, it's really Bing, it's Azure, it's all their other services that already exist and continue on regardless of we have a speaker in our house.
Yeah.
So that research, all that is continuing. They're going to continue implementing it. So yeah, if a wearable device comes out and they need like a voice assistant or voice interaction models, they still have that. They're not discontinuing that work. They're just not putting it into consumer-facing devices that you buy at this time. So,
yeah.
I think it's enough for it, Evoke. Let's move on to Surface Laptop 4 specs. So you have actually reported on some of this stuff previously. In fact, we wrote an article, you and I think it was it was in December, about what we expect in 2021 from the Surface team. And we had quite a lot of predictions in there. And you had already said that, yeah, Intel 11th gen and new AMD processors. The difference this time was the AMD option was going to go from the 15-inch to also the 13-inch this time around. And now this week we saw some more confirmed specs, in quotes, about what Surface Laptop 4 is going to be, which we are expecting to be announced in April, I believe. Do you want to take us through these, and I can kind of then break down some of these specs?
Yeah, so the biggest news, as Dan mentioned, we already knew that it would be 11th gen chips, the same chips found in the Surface Pro 7, I believe, 7 Plus, sorry, coming to the Laptop 4, 13, and 15 for business. That includes Intel Iris graphics, Iris Xe graphics, I believe.
So this is where I have issues. Oh, there goes my voice again. That's where I have some issues with this report. They claim for graphics is Iris Plus graphics 950.
That'd be disappointing.
I find that weird.
Yeah, for sure.
One, when you look up these processors, the i5 and i7, 1145 G7 and 1185 G7, the GPU listed by Intel is Iris Xe. They could, I guess, put in Iris Plus, which would be a downgrade. But we've already seen Surface Pro 7 Plus ship with Iris Xe graphics. And that's a much more thermally constrained device.
Yeah.
So why would they do that for the laptops?
The only reason why I could think they'd even consider doing something like that is to make the Ryzen ones look better. Because obviously they will have Ryzen. I think they'll have Vega, I guess, again. And, because let's be honest, the 11th gen chips with the Xe graphics, pretty good, if not better than the Ryzen 4000 series chips and graphics that they're planning to put in on the AMD ones. And, I don't know, maybe Microsoft just thought, you know what, we need to throttle the Intel one in some form. I really hope they didn't make that choice. I really hope they didn't.
That'd be ridiculous. If these don't have Iris Xe graphics, I'm going to be pretty upset.
Yeah,
because
me too.
For those who don't listen to this podcast regularly, we've covered the Xe platform,
and
they actually are.
Yeah,
it's a massive jump in performance.
Honestly, if they don't have Xe graphics, I don't think I would be able to recommend the Laptop 4 at the prices that they are, which will be $999 and up.
Yeah, I agree 100% there. It's definitely would be inexplicable for that
Yeah.
decision, especially when when the Surface Pro 7 Plus has it, which means the Pro 7 Plus in theory could then beat out laptop. Now, the the Pro 7 Plus i5 is fanless, so that's a distinction here. Laptop does have fans in it, or a fan, I should say. But yeah, now the disappointing news seems to be confirming that these will ship with Ryzen 4000 mobile chips. And the reason that's disappointing is they're just now starting to ship AMD 5000. These were announced in January, but they're just coming to market now, which means in theory there's no reason why Microsoft couldn't have done that. Brad Sams, over at Petrie, he had a kind of a theory that basically Microsoft and AMD have a deal for the Xbox, for the processors there, which are made by AMD. And in exchange, AMD was like, hey, you can take some of our older 4000, our older chips at a bargain. Yeah. And so, I wouldn't doubt that. I've talked a lot on this podcast about how these deals are made for processors that we're not privy to, which is why sometimes we see these inexplicable choices. Is there a huge difference between the 4000 and 5000? No, it's around a 10 to 15% improvement. That's not insignificant. I mean, it's faster, don't get me wrong.
It's a bigger jump from the 3000 to the 4000 series, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a lot of problems with the 3000 series, and that's why I really panned the last Surface Laptop Surface Laptop 3 15-inch. I did not like it because the 3000 series really is disappointing. 4000 is a massive jump, and it's a good chip. I don't want to pan it. And going to 5000 isn't as big of a deal. It would have been nice, but I think these will still get very good performance. But yeah, it's going to come down to these kind of graphics choices. So anything else we're expecting that's different?
I don't think so. As I mentioned, obviously Ryzen 5 in the 13.5 inch. They're reporting Ryzen 7 as well. I did not have that in my list. I only have Ryzen 5 in my 13-inch list here. So yeah, I think the AMD's coming to the 13-inch is good because it makes it more. And actually, on my list here, I have Ryzen 5 as the entry-level 999 version. So the cheapest Intel one you can get will be the i5 8 gigs with 512 gig storage at $1,300. So Microsoft is really putting AMD at the forefront this time around, whereas last time AMD was 15-inch only, and only really for people who really wanted that chip. Whereas I think this time they're sort of positioning it as, oh no, the AMD chips are for everybody. Like you should, if you're considering a laptop, consider one with AMD, which I think makes sense because, the AMD ones are the Surface Edition branded ones. They're Microsoft custom, which means I think graphically they're a little bit more powerful than the standard Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7.
They get like an extra execution unit or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing they do with the SQ1 and SQ2, which is based on Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8CX chips. So, yeah, I think that's everything. I'm not seeing anything else new here. Oh, there'll be 32 gigabytes of RAM for the Intel model, which is just aligning the laptop with all the other services that have been refreshed in the last year. Surface Book 3, Surface Studio 2, which was more than a year, sorry. So, Studio 2 was the first to support 32 gigs, and Book 3, Pro 7 Plus, and I want to say, no, that's it, that's right. That's the only ones that have 32 gigs. And now obviously the laptop 4 will as well. So that's nice.
And for ports, we're still expecting USB-A, USB-C, Thunderbolt 4.
Design will be the same. Yeah, it's going to be just a refresh, really.
And the Thunderbolt 4 thing we've already talked about on the podcast previously would be a challenge here. Not impossible, but a challenge because they're offering both Intel and AMD. So I don't think they'd want to offer. Intel would have TB4 built in. It's kind of part of the chipset, unless you ask them not to. So then they would have Thunderbolt 4 on one laptop, and the exact same 13-inch with AMD would not have Thunderbolt 4. Yeah. Although you can do Thunderbolt 4 on AMD, I don't know the exact hoops that they got to jump through to get to it, but you can technically do it. You barely ever see it though.
Yeah.
So there would have been a challenge, and they don't want to have, again, which is Panos's worst nightmare, this Type-C plug that you don't know what it is when you're plugging in or looking at it. I think that argument is getting a little bit old, and they're certainly not helping themselves here by splitting up this weird processor change. I kind of personally feel like they don't need to go with AMD here. I feel like this is really muddying the water.
You just hate AMD, Dan.
Yeah, listen. When I get my hands on the 4000, maybe I'll change my mind. It's just the way I use these laptops, and this really comes down to how you use this stuff. So take this with a grain of salt. If you're using this laptop for the browser, office, email, maybe an occasional, little game here, watching movies, video, all this kind of stuff, you're not going to be you're not going to notice a day-to-day difference between these two chips. It just doesn't. Listen, I mean, I use the XPS 15, the XPS 17. I used every laptop out there. For my job, web pages open, just as fine. The only difference that comes down to when you're using a laptop like that is the battery life. And that's going to be an interesting question here. AMD has sort of caught up, and in some places they would argue surpassed Intel for battery life. It's a little more challenging with the 11th gen stuff. I think it comes a little bit more even. I'd probably be willing to give AMD the benefit of the doubt, but they may actually be slightly better here. I guess all this raises the question of, will I do an Intel versus AMD comparison?
I think you have to.
Yeah, so I'm pretty positive. I'm calling it now. Microsoft will send me the AMD version because that's when they're going to probably push. And then Intel will be talking to, may try to send me the Intel version, in which case I'll hopefully be able to do a comparison. I think it'll be a really interesting one. But I do think we're also getting down to sort of nitty-gritty differences. Like, I really don't feel like...
I don't think the difference between the AMD and Intel chips will be as drastic as they were with the laptop 3, because the laptop 3, the Intel one, was the winner. It just was. Whereas this time, I think it might be a little bit more neck and neck.
And I think, getting a little technical here, part of that's because it's clear Microsoft is using the same design between these two. And AMD, I think, would rightly argue, and Intel would too, that in order to better optimize a system for their chip, you need to design the system from the ground up. So these AMD, laptops aren't necessarily redesigned completely for the AMD things. And what I mean by that is, like, these AMD processors, I believe, are 7 nanometer. If not, the 5000 are definitely 7 nanometers. The Intel are 10 nanometers. So in theory, the chipset and everything is smaller for AMD. So what a company would then do is go like, well, that's a smaller chipset. We can squeeze in more battery. So they put in a bigger battery. And then AMD gets like a double whammy, right? The processor is more efficient, plus you're physically getting a larger battery. There won't be a battery difference between these two, I guarantee it, because they're not going to have a separate battery supply just for AMDs and then a second one for Intel, because it doubles their costs. So they're just going to use the same battery for either one, which means the gains you get from a 7 nanometer system here are kind of lost. You're not going to necessarily see the system optimized for it. So,
the biggest offender, which is apparently still the case in the laptop 4, according to these leaked specs, is that the 15-inch shares the same size battery as the 13-inch. That was the same on the laptop 3, and I thought that was that was ridiculous, because the 15-inch already didn't have great battery life, and obviously it's pushing a larger, slightly higher resolution display, so it's going to drain slightly faster as a result. But you do notice that thing. I remember when the people started buying the AMD 15-inch, one of the first complaints was the battery life on this is not good, and that's because it's using the same size battery as found in the 13.5-inch. So what's all that extra space in the 15-inch doing? It's just empty, I guess. I don't know. It's ridiculous. I'm not... The 15-inch Surface laptop does feel like an afterthought, right? It's like, why does this exist? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's not uncommon. LG does that too for the Gram series. And the reason is, one, it does keep costs down. They can just buy one battery component. So there is that aspect. And listen, at the end of the day, this is a business. They're making money, right? And their job is to make as much money out of you as possible. And part of their program manager's job is to reduce costs. Like, that's, it's capitalism. It's not necessarily all about you. So I'll keep that in mind. I'll also say the other is a design choice. Microsoft can turn around and be like, Surface Laptop 3 15-inch is a very thin and light 15-inch laptop,
True.
which, to their credit, is more rare. When you
Yeah,
typically
that's
hit
true.
a 15-inch size, you're hitting workstations. Like
Yeah.
you'll go to an XPS 15, which is a beefy, kind of heavy laptop by comparison. So they do choose to do that so they can get like a lighter laptop. So there are these design choices. All of it overlaps. But we'll have to wait and see for that. But that is what we're expecting. So again, minor refresh. I'm curious if there'll be any changes or improvements to the display.
Not that I've been told.
I know. The Surface devices have great displays, but we just haven't seen any like innovation there for years now.
You know,
I will say, I started using my Pro X recently again. That display is so good. I still love that device. It's just like it's just the best of everything.
So,
but go on.
I have a theory because obviously the Surface laptops and the Surface Pros and even the Book, I mean the Surface Book 2, the Surface Book as well, they've all sort of been the same since they were announced, or they've all sort of been the same in the last 5 years. Like the Book was announced in 2015. It's identical with the Surface Book 3, hasn't changed. Laptop was announced in 2017, basically the same. They added a 15-inch version, but it's still the design hasn't changed. We all know the Pro's design hasn't really changed since 2014. I have a feeling that we're in for a huge sort of Surface rejuvenation, if you will. Maybe next year, or maybe the year after next, but coming up after the Laptop 4. I think because obviously the rumor is the next Surface Pro will have a redesign, and the Surface Studio, although we don't really know much about the next Surface Studio, I would be surprised if it's still using the Surface Studio's 2's chassis. I would hope. I hope that they have reworked that a little bit. I'm starting to hear that the next Surface Book will have a significant redesign of some kind. And I would be surprised, I'm expecting obviously Surface Neo and Duo to be revised upon and whatever going forward as well. I think maybe 2022 onwards we're going to start seeing new designs for these Surface products, and that would be nice to see because I think you're right. I think the Surface line has become kind of stale outside of the Duo, and the Neo. Like their existing products haven't really changed much. They've been busy building other stuff, I guess, that we just haven't seen yet. And hopefully we start to see that soon.
I'm feeling it a lot. Even the Pro 7 Plus, which I gave a very good review for, and it is more than just a processor upgrade. There's a lot of small things that went on with that device that actually make it the best Surface Pro that's ever existed. Like that's absolutely a fact, right? And they could have called it Surface Pro 8 and just continued that, but I don't use it regularly because compared to the Pro X just has a superior design overall. Yeah. The display is larger, just better. I mean, everything about it, the pen, all this kind of stuff. And Surface Laptop, I love laptop. Every time I use Surface Laptop, which isn't as often because I'm always reviewing other laptops that I try to live in while I can. When I do pick up Surface Laptop, it is a really good hardware. I mean, to their credit, I've said this before where it's like, they kind of figure out a formula and then it just kind of works really well. The keyboard, the trackpad, the angles, the way it closes, even the display, the webcam, all that, the audio, the hidden speakers, like we do take it for granted that it's like, it's boring. That said, it is nice to see them sort of make improvements. I remember Panay told me, they only do certain upgrades if they can like improve the display or really improve the performance and battery life. And some of those things we have seen improvements on. But like, listen, when they improve the battery life, it's not them. It's like Intel, right? Intel's improved their chipsets and made it smaller and they can put in a bigger battery. That's what happened with the Pro 7 Plus. So it's like, it's not them doing that stuff, but when it comes to the display technology or the pen and inking or the audio stuff, that is them. And we haven't really seen a lot of movement there. So hopefully we'll see more with Surface Laptop. I think the Laptop 4, I'll be very happy when I use it. I'll probably give it a good review. Yeah. Just because its legacy is still good. But I think we can all agree, Thunderbolt 4, slightly thinner bezels, improved display. Like there are little things that could be made better there. Heck, even adding an LTE option would just be like kind of nice. Anywho, speaking of more rumors coming, Surface webcam. This was Brad Sams at Petrie reported this, and I don't think it's outside the realm.
I also don't think it's a Surface webcam. I think it's just a Microsoft branded webcam.
Microsoft. Yeah, this is gonna be yeah. Don't forget, it was called Microsoft LifeCam years ago. They had a whole lineup of these. And Microsoft and the Surface team do a lot of webcams. Every Surface has one or two even. And they're very good. And Surface Hub has Surface Hub 2 has a 4K one that attaches. Mm-hmm. So webcams have become very important, obviously, over the last year due to the pandemic and work from home push. So that's not necessarily going away, but we talked about that last week, I believe, on the podcast regarding webcams. So I'm not surprised they're doing this. I am surprised it's coming kind of this late. It would have been better to have it's come out in the fall. But it's not going to be 4K, evidently, but it will be HDR. It will have a privacy cam. We don't know if it'll have Windows Hello, which,
I don't think it will.
If it doesn't, I'm okay with them wanting to save cost, but in that sense, they should offer just two versions, one with Windows Hello and one without, because that's one reason I don't love the new Razer Kaio Pro. It's a good camera. I still got to do that review too, but it doesn't have Windows Hello. Brio does, and when I have a desktop system, I find that way more useful. In fact, when I was testing the Kaio, I had both set up. So the Brio would log me in, but the camera part was for the Razer camera. The 4K we've discussed last week is no big deal, or it was 2 weeks ago we discussed that. Because, simply put, nothing is really streaming in 4K. You can do it technically to YouTube as a one-to-one kind of thing. But this isn't a gaming camera. This is for businesses. When you're on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Skype, you can only go up to, if you're lucky, full HD. A lot of times it's 720p. So I don't think the 4K thing here is that big of a deal. Plus, it allows them to kind of keep costs down. But this also presumably will be announced in April, along with what we expect to be Surface Headphones 3, which will be interesting. Would you be surprised and shocked if I told you we're not expecting any major changes with Surface Headphones 3?
Oh, no, big change. They'll be team certified.
That is one of the funniest things, by the way. That is a feature. Because I remember people asking me that. Yeah. Why is my phone vibrating? It should be in a meeting. I remember people asking me that with Surface Headphones 2, and it's I didn't even know what that was. But they weren't. That was weird. Maybe they improve some of the materials because those headphones still break apart after.
The biggest complaint is that they snap at the headband sometimes. And I know why. It's because it's plastic and it's not really designed for much expanding.
Right. And it's also the foam sometimes comes separated.
Mine is starting to, I don't know if you can see that, but mine is slowly starting to come off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mine are in mint condition because I barely use them.
I use mine all the time. These are the way I listen to things on my computer.
It's good to know. I'm just not a big headphone person. I mean, I use the earbuds way more than the headphones. But it's also because I haven't left the house much in the last year. Yeah. So that's April. Anything else we're expecting for April?
I don't think so. Maybe. I think Brad Sands mentioned that there will be a dongle of some kind, which I think will be for the headphones, but I don't know what kind of dongle. Yeah, I think the dongle will maybe add. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it plugs in here and then it adds a mic that comes to your mouth. I don't know what the dongle is. I'm just guessing. But something like that. Apparently there's a dongle being announced. So the question I have really is, will this be an event or will this just be a blog post? I have a feeling it will just be a blog post. I don't think Panos will...
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there'll be a 10-minute stage demo like they did with the Duo or whatever. I think this will just be a blog post.
I don't know if he'll announce it, right? I mean, do it. Because they've done some... Surface Pro 7, I don't think was announced by Panos.
No, right. That was a blog post, yeah.
That was shifted off to other people below him. Just push it. This isn't a me time kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. We still have that design. I thought we moved on.
Plus, they're going to be stupid Windows Central and Brad Sams and whatever German site, When Future D or whoever was ruined everything. Hey, to our credit, sorry Microsoft, this wasn't a lot of us leaking this stuff this time.
No, we didn't do it. We kept quiet. We kept quiet.
So don't blame us. Yes. We're not trying to snoop around here. That said, it's not our fault either that you have an unexciting April.
Wow. Jeez.
I'm just saying, listen, I'm going to love these products. There's no doubt about it, right? I love Surface Laptop. If I could just use certain devices, Surface Laptop would be up there. But I have a lot of exciting stuff to cover that I'm being sent on a weekly basis that I think is really interesting.
I would prefer to see an update to the Surface earbuds. Unfortunately, we don't have any rumors that suggest a refresh of the Surface earbuds on the way. But I would love to see them add wireless charging and a better case. I really don't like the case on the Surface earbuds.
Or even they pause when they come out of your ears.
That would be nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of small things they can do. They nailed the comfort.
They're very comfortable. You're right. Yeah.
I know everybody likes to make fun of me for wearing them.
Also,
whatever.
More colors.
They're not. You know what though? More colors.
They should be more colors. Yeah, or just all the colors of the type cover. They should just do that because that'd be really cool.
That's true. Burgundy would be interesting.
Yeah.
I love. Well, they kind of phased it. No, you fade it. Burgundy isn't a thing anymore. It's now the red.
It's poppy red. Yeah, they got poppy red. They've got ice blue, and they've got sandstone and platinum.
Glacier.
Oh yeah, so they have glacier and what are these called? Something grey. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Something. It's like something grey. I can't remember.
Look, as silly as these may look to you, they're not Apple AirPods.
And that's all that matters.
And that's all that matters, because those are still. I don't care if every human wears them. You still look stupid with the AirPods in. Sorry, never going to change that. And you still got to buy a new one because you lost it while it fell out of your ear on the airplane or whatever. All right, that's enough for ripping on Apple this week. Let's go to Windows 10 news. Spotlight for Zach here. Zach, what happened in Windows 10 this week?
Not too much. They rolled out a new build in the dev channel, as is usually the case, with some minor news and interest stuff. They appear to have settled on like a final feature set for this thing. So I'll just read the paragraph. Over the last 2 months, we've been trying out several variations of the news and interest experience on the Windows taskbar. We have received a lot of great feedback from Windows insiders, and as a result, have landed on what we believe to be the best experience for customers. The news and interest flyout experience will now show 2 columns of content, making it easy to quickly glance over your feed of weather, headlines, etc., etc. By default, it will open via hover or click. Based on your feedback, we will also be introducing an option to only open via click in a coming update. Finally, I don't know what. So Microsoft obviously did some market research and whatnot, and found that people actually don't mind it when you just hover over it and it pops open. I hate that. Anything on the taskbar should be a clickable thing. If it's on the taskbar, do not make it a hoverable action. That is ridiculous. Other than app previews, whatever they are, when they have an app open, that's fine. Everything else should just be a click. Come on now. Anyway, they're adding an option for that. And as a result of these changes, we're resetting the rollout of news and interest for insiders in the dev channel. So if you had it previously and you upgrade to this new build, you might not have it anymore, and it may take a few days or whatever for it to gradually be re-enabled on your device. Elsewhere, they are removing 3D Viewer and 3D Paint. Not for those upgrading, but if you clean install whichever release this ends up being, which I guess will be Sun Valley, Paint 3D and 3D Viewer will no longer be there. This is just Microsoft cleaning up in preparation for Sun Valley, of course. Sun Valley is supposed to be this sort of rejuvenation of the Windows UX and much more modern and clean, and as a result, they're removing some of the legacy and even modern apps that nobody uses anymore. So there you go. And they're also removing the math input panel. So if you still use that, RIP. A bunch of fixes and a bunch of known issues as normal. But yeah, that's basically everything regarding Windows this week. Although I do want to talk about... I have a theory. I just want to talk about... I want to share my theory and see what people think about it. So the rumor as of recent has been that Microsoft is planning a sort of big Windows event at some point this year, and maybe a new marketing campaign, a big sort of push to get people reinterested in Windows later this year with Sun Valley and maybe even 10X. I have a theory that Microsoft is planning to not rebrand Windows, because that would be crazy, but sort of align 10X and desktop, because right now they're very different products and branded differently. You have Windows 10X and Windows 10 desktop. But with the whole new Windows stuff, I've just been thinking maybe they're actually planning some marketing push that aligns these. And my theory is that they are going to rebrand, considering Sun Valley and the idea that they're bringing a lot of 10X UI and feature set to desktop. What if they're planning to rebrand Windows 10 Desktop as Windows 10X Home /Pro and then actual Windows 10X becomes Windows 10 Cloud. Because we know 10X is launching without Win32 support. It will eventually get Win32 support, of course, but it's only really there for fallback. For the most part, I think you'll be using streaming or web apps and whatnot. That way, they could differentiate the products while aligning them. You could say 10X Cloud or 10X Lite, whatever you want to call it, will be this lightweight version with fast OS updates and it's much more secure. Then you have 10X Home/Pro, which is Windows 10 Home/Pro, but with the new Sun Valley stuff on top of it. It's just a theory. This isn't stuff I've heard. I'm just literally thinking out loud about what they're planning in regards to branding, because they're in a hard, sticky place right now. If they are planning this new Windows push, the question is, what version of Windows are they considering the new Windows? Are they considering Sun Valley or are they considering 10X? They're both launching this year, in the second half of this year. If they push to 10X as the new Windows, which is the true new Windows, let's be real, that's the next generation of Windows, it's based on Windows Core, then all of the work they're putting into Sun Valley is wasted, because it's like, oh yeah, but let's not forget about Sun Valley. Here's the next generation of Windows. On the other hand, if you make it all about Sun Valley, then 10X gets lost it gets lost and no one cares about it, even though that is the true next generation. Now, Microsoft may actually prefer that, right? They may actually not want people to care about 10X this year anyway. But I don't know. I think maybe they're planning to align the branding across both. And it will be Windows 10X Cloud for actual 10X and then Windows 10X Home Pro for desktop.
Not confusing at all. When will we get Windows 10X on Surface Pro X so the X's line up?
Well, that would be it, right? Because what does Surface Pro X launch with now? Windows 10 Home, right? So it would be upgraded to Windows 10X Home. There you go. And you'd get the new UX and stuff. It'd be great, but it's still based on legacy Windows, because of course it is. You can't upgrade from legacy Windows to Windows Core, but you can add a lot of the 10X features on top of legacy Windows, and therefore I think that would warrant the 10X branding. If it looks and feels a bit like 10X and has a new UI and is much faster and much more smooth, which is what Sun Valley is supposed to be, I think they could get away with it. I really do think that. But then now that I think about it, that's just Windows RT, Windows 8 all over again.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not being paid to figure out how to market these two versions of Windows that are launching at the same time, but for completely different markets.
The good news, what I've learned over the internet over the last decade, is everybody else is an expert in comments about marketing. Even though they themselves don't work in marketing, they know the answers and know better than everybody, which is why they're in comments and don't do this profession.
Of course.
That's obviously a little tongue in cheek. I honestly find naming stuff a little bit, there definitely is an analysis that needs to be done on this stuff. There's sort of a rationalization. But when it comes to tech and basically kind of anything, actually, naming becomes very difficult the more complicated things get. A lot of people like to give Apple credit, like they just call it the Apple iPad. And no matter what year it is and what version it is, of course, it's still a huge pain when you go to sell it. I remember when I went to go sell one of my iPads, and I had to look up the serial number just to find out what version it was, what generation it was, because I had no idea anymore. It was a couple of years. So it's not without its problems. I couldn't just go like, when I was trading in my iPad for an iPhone, I couldn't be like, here's my iPad. It's just Apple iPad. Give me money. No, they want to know what version it was, what year it was, all that kind of stuff. And same if you go to sell it, right? If you go to sell it, you can't just be like, I'm going to sell my Apple iPad. Okay. Oh, I want an iPad. Sure. $800, right? They're going to know what year, what model, what make, how much RAM how much storage it has, right? Same with the Apple Watch. People are like, it's just called the Apple Watch. Oh, is it? Is it? It's actually called the Apple Watch Gen 6 44 millimeter. Was it space gray with LTE with the loop strap, right? Like, it's actually all of that, because you can't just buy it as an Apple Watch. I can't go to the store. And if I had a problem with it, I couldn't call Apple and be like, my Apple Watch is broken. Oh, your Apple Watch is broken. Let's fix your Apple Watch. They're going to want to know all that. So I'm just saying naming is complicated. So there's no easy way around this stuff. Samsung does it. Why did they jump from, what was it? The
S9, S10 to the S20. Yeah.
S10 to the S20. We just all accepted that.
Or Windows 8 to Windows 10 was fine.
Yeah, like, what happens to 9? There's a discussion around that stuff. It's kind of fun. I think people take it way too seriously, think about it way too hard. I don't think customers necessarily care. A good point with Microsoft would be the weird naming for Xbox. That's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of all over the place. You can argue a tad confusing, but show me the negative results for it.
Yeah.
Like, Xbox seems to be selling quite well. They seem to be doing all right. We're not hearing a ton of stories like on Gizmodo, like everybody's buying the new Xbox and they're getting the wrong one. Like, you're not hearing that kind of controversy. I have heard tech support people recently on Reddit. This is a thing kind of complaining about this stuff, how difficult it can be to deal with a customer. I get that. I sympathize. No one cares. Sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but like, the world of marketing and selling stuff is not dependent about what tech support thinks. Tech support's listen, it's a hard job. They earn my respect. I understand the problems they have to deal with, but their problems aren't the same problems that marketing is going to care about. So that's just it. Though sometimes it does matter. I mean, supposedly one of the rumors they didn't call it Windows 9 was because of Windows 98 and 95 existing, and already having a Windows 9 ordering issue could cause problems for things. So whatever. We just went. That was your small Dan rant for the week. That's it for Windows 10 stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's move on to Edge news. We talked about Edge at the beginning of the podcast here, but some specific features are coming. One of them is really kind of cool, which is called the well, we call it the tabs preview, but its more technical name is called tab hover card images.
Good name.
So if you remember on the old version of Edge, when you had tabs open, if you moved your mouse cursor over the tab, it would actually show you a little physical image of that web page so you can know what it was, which for people like me who have a ton of tabs open was really nice because you could see the page without clicking the tab itself. So when you're looking for that one specific tab, it was a literal, I don't know, you could say a tab hover card preview of it. Well, that was in the old Edge. It is now coming to new Edge. It was in Canary. It is now in Dev. If you're in Dev, you may or may not get it. It is A/B testing. You can, though, go and enable it yourself. If you want to go to edge:/flags, if you search for tab hover card images, you can enable it. You know, conversely, if you have this feature and you hate it, you can go also and disable it there. So I'm sure once it ships, this will be an option for users. It'll be just another thing in the settings you'll be able to turn on and off. Right now, it's a little bit aggressive. It does pop up very quickly. In fact, it can show up behind other windows, which is kind of funny. But it is very useful. It works, doesn't matter if it's in vertical or horizontal tab layout. But it's a really nice feature. Now, the first comment on this article really kind of annoyed me. And I guess if anyone updated it. I don't think so. Yeah, so someone was like, so we just wrote that this feature was available now and you can go try it, all this kind of stuff. And someone goes, no, this is just a Chrome feature that Edge obtained by being a Chromium browser with the, three-finger snap. And I had to point out, for one, that's irrelevant. I don't really care if Chrome has this. It's now an Edge, and that's what the news story is about.
You'll find that most of the flags in Edge are just Chromium flags.
True, but he's also still wrong. I fired up my version of Chrome, which I have the portable one, so I don't have to actually install it in my system. Was version 89 something. And they do have a feature where when you hover over a tab, it gives you an expanded name and title of the card. That's it. It doesn't show you an actual image preview of the webpage, which as far as I know is an Edge thing. It's not available in Chrome. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm, I just tried it myself and that's what I got. So this comment was really dumb on two fronts, but
it wouldn't be a podcast if Dan wasn't crapping all over the comments.
It's my brand. And I love when people are like, someone told me last week, you're borderlining on rude and offensive. I'm like, that is who I am. Sorry. It's been like this for a decade. I'm not changing. Sorry. But yeah, so I think this is a really cool feature. Again, I think it's something different we haven't seen in other browsers. It's really neat. I do agree, for some people I can see not liking this because it is weird how it pops up, and sometimes it can interfere if you're just scrolling across tabs. but still, like when they go to ship this was actually kind of came out as a flag almost like last summer, I believe. So it's starting to finally come around. So that's pretty cool. Also, apparently in Edge Canary, you can now import passwords via a CSV file, which is that's kind of like the universal format for password managers. Most password managers allow you to export as a CSV file. So this is the first steps if you already use, a different, not just a browser. You can already transmit if you're switching from Chrome to Edge, you can already kind of bring over your passwords. This is if you use something like, I believe NPass does it, LastPass most certainly does it, OnePass. They all allow you to export stuff. So you can export your passwords, put it into Edge, and then you can get it on Edge desktop, but it syncs to the cloud. And then you can also get it on your phone via iOS or Android by using Edge on those devices. And this is that first step. We still don't know Microsoft's grand plan, if there is one, for password management. Like, are we going to get a separate app at some point? We don't know. They kind of do now with Authenticator.
Yeah.
That also ties into this. But this is a great way if you're still want to switch to Edge, but you're like, oh, all my passwords exist in LastPass. How do I get them over here? This seems to be a step in there. So that's an Edge Canary. So, but that's it. There's probably more stuff in Edge. It's hard to keep up. There's so much stuff happening in all the branches.
Yeah.
But still kind of exciting to cover. Want to go to why don't you talk a little bit about Xbox and Bethesda?
Sure, dump that one on me.
Yeah.
So this week the Bethesda acquisition, the ZeniMax acquisition, was closed. It's been greenlit. The EU doesn't seem to care. So Microsoft now officially owns Bethesda. And as of this week, 20 Bethesda games are now joining Xbox Game Pass. And yes, I will list all of them for you now. It is Dishonored Definitive Edition, Dishonored 2, Doom, Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom 64, Doom Eternal, The Elder Scrolls 3, The Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, The Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim Special Edition, Elder Scrolls Online, The Evil Within, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Fallout New Vegas, Prey, Rage 2, Wolfenstein, The New Order, Wolfenstein, The Old Blood, and Wolfenstein Young Blood. So all of those are on Xbox Game Pass, I think, as of now. You can access them, of course, on your Android phone or eventually iOS and eventually Windows as well. So that would be pretty cool. And if you're on console, of course, you can just use Game Pass and download them and play them actually on your console or PC if you use Game Pass on PC. So that's pretty cool. Now, the question everybody has, of course, is what's the plan in regards to exclusivity of these games? Because now they're Xbox Game Studios games. Does that mean Microsoft will make them exclusive to Xbox and PC? And Microsoft hasn't really... They've said there will be exclusives for Xbox and PC, but not everything will be exclusive. So it's a case-by-case basis. So I guess it will really depend on the time and I guess how big the game is. Because, I think the biggest ones that people are concerned about are obviously the Elder Scrolls series, maybe Fallout as well. Will those games be on PlayStation 5? Will Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 or whatever? And the answer is we don't know. It would be weird for Microsoft to make them available on PS5, but at the same time, Xbox is all about inclusivity and making gaming available to everybody. So I wouldn't be surprised if those games did end up on PS5. But from a business perspective, I don't think it makes sense unless Microsoft can convince Sony to allow Game Pass on PlayStation 5. I think it would be interesting to see Microsoft say, hey, listen, we want to bring Fallout 5 to PlayStation 5. However, Sony is telling us no, because we want to package Fallout 5 with Game Pass. And then it's on Sony, right? Then if Sony's the one saying no, then there's no one to blame but Sony, and it's good PR for Microsoft. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do this going forward. But I do think there will be, Microsoft thinks already confirmed that they're going to honor the existing games that have already been announced for PS5, which I don't know what they are. But for future titles like Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 5, etc., it remains to be seen.
It is pretty impressive, especially with that. And this ties in a little bit. Well, I guess we'll talk about the ZeniMax deal while we're talking about some Xbox stuff here. So, Jez Corden pretty good editorial here about this topic. And, his main, point, as far as I can tell, was one, Nintendo does ride a lot on nostalgia. It just has a lot of legacy. There's a reason why people love the Switch, besides its size and its price and all that kind of stuff. The fact is, it has Mario, it has Zelda, it has these games that people just feel an attachment, an emotional attachment to, Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a reason why the Switch has been so successful. And in fact, it's one of the top platforms, which is kind of insane. Despite we can argue, and I would, that the hardware itself is kind of crappy. It's kind of really remarkable. And it's not that I begrudge it's kind of crappy. I understand the price point, what they're going for. I think they should do that. But I think how many years has the rumor been there's a Switch Pro coming? I think there's a new one now, right? There's a new rumor that's going to have like Samsung OLED display or something like that.
A bigger screen, yeah.
So, but my God, we've heard that rumor for like 3 years now, and it hasn't happened. But still, it goes to show you just how powerful Nintendo's IP is. And then you have Sony, which, of course, as you mentioned, already has a very strong history and legacy of, this was especially going 2-3 years ago. This was the real main difference between Sony and Xbox was Sony just had all these amazing first-party titles that that Xbox couldn't compete with. And now, in buying Bethesda and all this kind of stuff, it's like Microsoft has just kind of bought themselves into that stuff because these games have such legacy to them. And then that question pops up, should they make them exclusive? So go check out Jez's article. It's, I won't give the whole thing away here, but it's Microsoft's big ZeniMax deal makes Xbox a game franchise powerhouse. And yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true here. And they kind of bought themselves into that nostalgia without having to recreate it, which is, it's the way the world works. When you got a lot of money, you can just buy your way into these kind of things too.
And Microsoft really needs to, because Xbox has fallen off the shelf in recent years, and it's slowly climbing its way back up and acquiring. One of the biggest criticisms Xbox has these days is that there's no first-party exclusive games. PlayStation 4 and 5 PlayStation 4 had a great run when it comes to exclusive single player games, like story driven games and whatnot, and Xbox really sort of didn't. And with the acquisition of ZeniMax and indeed all the other recent acquisitions they've had, Microsoft is in a real position to start pumping out games that fulfill that want from gamers. I see right now that people are still saying Xbox has no games, and Microsoft has made all these acquisitions, but we're yet to really see the result of these acquisitions. So in the next few years, it will be interesting to see, and hopefully we'll start seeing this year, what these game studios, including Bethesda and so on, are pumping out for Xbox and PC, because these will be Xbox PC games. They're not going to be Xbox only. The idea of a console only Xbox game is dead. That's not going to happen ever again. Sony, PlayStation fans, a lot of them don't seem to understand that. They seem to think that because the Xbox game is coming to PC, that Xbox will never have an exclusive again and therefore has no games, which is not, I guess, from the perspective of the plastic box. Sure, the plastic box doesn't have exclusive games anymore, but you have to remember that Xbox isn't just the console. Xbox is an ecosystem, it's a platform, and it's cross-device. Microsoft makes money from PC players just as much as it makes money from Xbox players. To Microsoft, it's all the same. The only people really hanging on to this idea that the console is this magical box that does special things are PlayStation fans at this point, because for them that's still the case. There's no PlayStation platform on PC. You can't download like a PlayStation store and play PlayStation games on your PC unless the developer makes their PlayStation game available in Steam, for example. So yeah, it's a different way of thinking about the gaming industry, and I know a lot of gamers are struggling to sort of work that out, especially on the PlayStation side, it seems. But this is how it's going to be going forward. And with the introduction of cloud gaming, these lines will be blurred even further, because eventually you won't even know what platform you're playing on. You'll be streaming it on your phone and it won't matter, right? It will be coming from a PC, it could be coming from an Xbox, or if Sony gets involved, it could even be coming from PlayStation one day. Who knows?
Yep, all good points. Yeah, well, we'll follow. We'll see. It's going to be really interesting to see what Microsoft does with new games coming forward from these studios, if they do lock them down to Microsoft. I don't think can't blame them if they do. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I mean, everybody else does it, so why shouldn't they? You can't yell at Microsoft for years to get their own
Yeah.
AAA titles, and then that are exclusive, and then when they do, I get it's unfair. People are looking for the sequel to your game, and it won't be available on Sony. But then
Well, listen, that's the way it is. Sony played real tough with the PS4. They were acquiring studios. They did exclusives that were PS only, and Xbox did miss out. And Sony didn't care. That's so what? that's business.
And Microsoft whiffed with some of its titles.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
which
sure.
Help,
Yeah.
It always takes two to win and lose in tech. You need to have a product that it's just like the Windows Phone stuff, right? It's like it helped that Android and iOS turned out to be really good operating systems, and they just had smart companies maneuvering and pricing things. It also helped that Microsoft whiffed on Windows Phone itself by switching the operating system 3 times, and the third one, I would argue, was the least impressive. Technically, it might have been impressive from Microsoft's standpoint, but from a user standpoint, it was never as delightful as what was Windows Phone 8.1, which I would still argue was the pinnacle of that.
Yeah.
And so
2012, 2013 were a bad couple of years for Microsoft because that was the Windows Phone 8, that was Windows 8 itself, that was Xbox One, that was Surface RT, and the first Surface Pro, all of which were essentially products that I think flopped quite significantly. And then
the Ballmer years.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Microsoft, the last 5 or 6 years have been Microsoft essentially just backtracking on all the decisions they made in the early 2010s, right? That's really what the last 5 years have been, and Xbox is a prime example of that. Just this week, they announced that they're removing One Guide from Xbox One. They're essentially removing the TV stuff from Xbox, which was what Xbox One was built around, the idea of it being an entertainment hub for TV as well as games, and now that's gone. It's crazy. It's insane. If we look at it as a success story today, but it's really not. It's not a success story. It's all right, fine, we were wrong story. But look, Microsoft is making money. Their shares are higher than ever, so I guess it all worked out. But if we actually look back, where we are today is only because the stuff that they tried flopped dramatically.
Ballmer had a very different view of Microsoft, which was, one, push into the consumer space.
Yeah, he wanted to compete with Apple.
He wanted to compete with Apple, and that's what Surface was, initially about. Mm-hmm. So that was the goal there. And then he also wanted to, kind of crush the competition and wanted to be the Microsoft ecosystem. 3 screens in the cloud, if you remember that, good for you. That was the vision back then. It was this idea of it was just going to be Microsoft, and you either play with us or you don't, get out of our way. And Nadella came in, and Nadella wasn't a fan of a lot of stuff. He infamously, I believe, voted against them acquiring Nokia. He was just not for that at all. So it's probably not too surprising that but he gave the Windows Phone team an opportunity. He's like, all right, I'm hired here, I'm taking over. But Windows 10 Mobile at that point was already in and coming out. So he's like, all right, well, we'll release it, we'll support it, and we'll see where it goes. If it sells, we'll continue with it. And the fact was, Windows 10 Mobile didn't sell, and so all this stuff just became a slow undoing of things. And that's where I think the pain comes from for a lot of Microsoft fans, who a lot of us were a fan of this kind of push into consumer space. But I think we can make a strong argument it didn't work. And it didn't work not because they canceled it. It didn't work because people didn't buy it.
That's true,
really
yeah.
Back down to it.
Yes, the response to Windows 8 was ridiculous. Windows RT never took off. Windows Phone, it sold in millions, but it wasn't enough to entice developers, and as a result, it didn't reach that point where it didn't snowball. There was no snowball moment.
They peaked with Windows Phone 8.0 and 8.1 with the Lumia 520 because it was a $99 phone.
Yep.
And it emerging markets where smartphones were not yet prevalent. And it also, as I was just saying, it takes 2 to tango in this stuff. It worked because Android was terrible at the low end at that point.
That's true.
It was more expensive and the performance was awful. If y'all remember, Android was not great for many years. And it was really terrible for performance. And that's where Nokia and Windows Phone excelled. But that changed within about 16 to 18 months with the especially Chinese companies getting involved with Android. And pretty soon we started seeing very, very nice Android phones competing. And then next thing you know, and that market is, you're selling a $99 phone. You know what the profit margin on that phone is?
Right.
You got to sell millions
Yeah.
before you get like an actual profit, right? Versus selling high-end stuff. So Windows Phone never did well in the high end, and then the low end where they were strong started to get beat back by Android significantly by 2015 and 2016. And when you lost that low end advantage and you never had the high end advantage, that's where you go. So, and then typically with the Xbox, you brought up One Guide. You can also bring up Connect, of course, which brilliant technology. They're still using it, right? It did evolve into a popular consumer or popular product, I should say, that's now with Azure and also used in HoloLens, but for a consumer product. Exercise, this whole idea in the living room, gestures in the living room, it was way ahead of its time, but it just didn't work. It worked, just people didn't enjoy it and developers didn't build games. So Microsoft is definitely, listen, they tried, right? There's that Bart Simpson thing with little cake, you tried. But at the end of the day, no matter how much we loved these products, including the Harman Kardon and Invoke, the fact was people didn't buy them. Most people didn't enjoy them. People who bought Windows Phone, a lot of people returned Windows Phone because they didn't have the apps that they wanted. That's the reality of it. So I know we're all like, damn you, Nadella. But like at the end of the day, he didn't cancel things that were doing well. I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah. He didn't look at Windows Phone like, wow, those profit margins are massive. Oh, look at next quarter's projections are huge. It's going up, up, up. Canceled. That didn't happen. That is not the story. The story was it's sinking. It's sinking more next quarter, and we don't have a way to turn the ship around, and all our OEMs are abandoning us on this. That was the story. So I get a little miffed about that whole Nadella thing, just because maybe he could have turned it around, but I think by that point it was way too late. I mean, Microsoft's whole legacy around Windows Phone and mobile was too little, too late. Even with Windows Phone 7, which as cool as that was still a good year or two too late. 2010. That's where they lost. Yeah, I mean, that's if you really want to go back to where its failure was. That's where it started. That team. They managed to pull out a wonderful operating system that was very late to the party and had its own setbacks, which is what.
Listen, nobody saw the iPhone coming. The iPhone is, I think, the biggest sort of hit product that changed the industry. Because, people say, oh, yeah, the products that's changed the industry. The only real product that changed the industry in the last 20 years is the iPhone, if you think about it. Because that product single-handedly turned smartphones at the time into something people actually want.
Which were niche.
In addition to becoming the way most people compute. I know people in real life that only have a smartphone, and it's usually an iPhone at this point. They don't have a laptop or a PC. They just do everything on their phone. They're banking on their phone. They're web browsing on their phone. Chatting with friends on their phone.
That was a motivation for Continuum.
Yeah, exactly. It's no other product I can think of has had that impact on the industry. Apple really nailed it.
Again, Continuum was another brilliant idea, like Connect. It was on paper, that's a brilliant idea. Yeah. And even the way it worked was really cool. It never caught on. It wasn't a selling point. And Samsung has tried it with DeX, but how many of you are using DeX? Right. How many of you buying a Samsung phone be like, oh, that's got the DeX thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, try explaining that even to a consumer on the street, like, oh, you use Samsung DeX?
See,
what are you talking about?
Apple again is the only company that could do it and do it well. But it would only the only way it would actually take off is if these sort of laptop shells became no different from having a phone case, in the sense that these things aren't super expensive. You're not paying $200 for one. They've got to be $99 at most, right? And you can get really nice. You can get fancy ones that cost more, or you can get super cheap ones. But you find them in stores. You can just buy them, right? And they're super cheap. You stick your phone in it, and now it's a laptop. That's the only way that idea becomes a reality and becomes mainstream, is if Apple does it and the shells are like cases, if you will.
We have seen, there have been Kickstarters in the past, that try to do
this with Android. But none of these are Apple, right? That's the problem.
Right.
Or Google, or one of these big companies.
It is weird too, because Lord knows the the new Apple MacBooks are basically just using the same silicon as the Apple iPhone.
Yep,
So,
yep.
yeah, why couldn't you do that? But it goes to show you that what seemed like great ideas at the time don't necessarily resonate with people. That's just, you got to go out there, you try things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Surface Book is a brilliant design, looks awesome. Is anyone really detaching that display?
No.
No.
The answer is no.
And despite, like, you can look at Surface Book and just be like, that is just like an amazing achievement in mobile computing that we have never thought we could do before. And yet no one takes advantage of it. And it goes to show you it's hard. It's hard when you get that stuff out in the real world, how people are going to use stuff, which, brings up the Duo. Real briefly on Duo. Zach and I have been noticing they've been doing a lot of Microsoft Launcher updates on this thing. And surprisingly, we've noticed a lot of improvements in things we wouldn't necessarily expect improvements in. One of them is the fingerprint reader works better, which is weird in the sense that it's not more accurate. It just sort of unlocks quicker and just gets you to it. Just everything is a little more zippy. It is, as an overall experience, much faster and smoother than where it was months ago. They've been just tweaking a lot, but it's a noticeable difference now, in my opinion, with the gestures and movements and animations there. And another thing we noticed, well, there's two other things. One is the camera now switches displays, it switches around much quicker. And it's not because we're getting camera updates via the store, it's because of Microsoft Launcher. And it could be related to last month's firmware update had some kind of plugin or some kind of thing that was sitting there, and the launcher update now interfaces with it and sort of enables it. But the camera now switches around and hops around the screens a lot better. Still a Potato Plus camera. That's a funny review said this week. And then Zach also noticed that the feed screen can now appear on the right screen when you put a window there. So this is really minutiae stuff, but it's just it's interesting because as far as we know, we've just been getting Microsoft Launcher updates, but it seems to be improving things dramatically. I'm actually been, I'm still using Duo as my main phone, but I've been using it a lot more recently just because it's been a lot more kind of quick and fast. But again, until you put this into people's hands, you don't know how they're going to use it, what they're going to like the most. For instance, we talked about the spanning apps thing. Yeah, spanning apps, super cool. Use both screens at once. Even cooler, using two apps at once. That seems to be the real selling point here. Anywho, we're getting a little long in the podcast. Going to wrap up here quickly with just a couple of shout outs. Mobile Pixels DueX Plus. I actually posted this story, then I had to pull it because I screwed up some stuff in it. But there is a Kickstarter going on right now called, the company is Mobile Pixels. And the thing that they're selling is called DueX Plus. And they've been around for a little while. They're actually based here in Boston. The founders of the company are graduates of MIT, and they started their own company. And what this does, if you remember a few years ago, Razer announced a concept device, and I forgot its name, but it was a laptop, and then two other displays slid out from behind it.
It got stolen, didn't it? Or one of the prototypes got stolen?
Yeah, and eventually, and it got stolen. But it was a 3-screened laptop that can then kind of surround you. So they've kind of took that idea and they've just basically made it. And so it's a display. It's around, there's 13 inches, I believe. It's 13.5 and 12.5. They have two of them. They have a couple of them, actually. And you attach the magnets to the back of your laptop's display. They stick on. And then you can attach this to it. And then the display slides out. And what's cool is that it articulates towards you, so it can kind of surround you. And it's really nice because it feels more seamless, because it feels more like how you set up your desktop with multiple displays. And it plugs in with the wire, and you can use it on different types of laptops. It works on Mac, works on Windows, it works even with a Nintendo Switch or an Android phone, of course, too. It's a little bit rough on the edges. I only had a prototype that was kind of put together by hand. But it's a neat idea. And for those of you who are looking for a secondary portable display, what's really cool about it too is it could slide out and then reverse. So it means you can sit there and look at your own display, but a person across from you can then see this display. This is meant for obviously people in meetings, sales pitches, and stuff like that, where the person can be doing a PowerPoint presentation, can be looking at their own screen, but then the person across from them can also see the display too, which is kind of rad. It's only I forgot the price. I think it's like $200 because there's a Kickstarter early adopter, early, thing if you get in on it. Go check it out though. DuX Plus. They've been around for a few years. It's a neat idea. I'm not completely sold on it yet because it is a little bit clunky still, but this is an interesting solution. As we move, don't forget, we're already getting into now rollable displays as well as foldable displays, right? So as that display technology improves, the likelihood and usefulness of this stuff, I think, will become greater. This is a first attempt, but at a couple $100, if you're kind of an early adopter type who likes to try out new tech, this actually looks kind of fun. It's a little weird to set up at first, but I have to admit, when you're kind of using it, if you really need that second display, it actually is pretty cool because you put like a document or something on the secondary display, and now you look at your main one, you can just kind of glance over. Sure, you can buy an external portable display like the Lenovo Think Vision, which I like a lot. That's bigger. It's actually super fragile. Zach knows. I broke one. Remember that in the suitcase?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It still sits external to you, and you have to like angle it, and it's still kind of, So there's pros and cons to each, but so that's kind of cool. I will be doing a more thorough review when the final version ships, but for now, if you want, go check it out. They will be selling them at a regular price in retail and all that kind of stuff later on. So, also my review, the Dell XPS 8940 Special Edition is now up. This is an interesting, the XPS line, of course, is the more premium line. This is a desktop built for basically creators, engineers, architects, video and photo editors who want a sleek, smallish desktop PC that looks nice. The SE version is all white. It looks kind of cool. It's pretty powerful, though. You can, of course, being a Dell, you can put an i5 in there and a basic video card, but it goes all the way up to like a Core i9 10th gen with RTX 2070 graphics. The version I tested was an i7 with 2070 graphics, and it doesn't have a liquid-cooled processor. It's just a big heat sink, and it has fans in it, and the way they position everything, the open ventilation is supposed to keep everything cool. I had no problems with it. Other reviewers have had no issues with it either. It starts around $1,600. You can get the non-special edition for even cheaper, and you can go a little bit spec it a little bit lower. Some people complained a little about, and this is a kind of a legit criticism. I'll go both ways on this. It only has a 500-watt power supply. It's a very good power supply, though, meaning it is a Platinum Plus rated one, 80 Platinum, they call it. So this means it's very energy efficient. It also, you're not going to get a lot of spikes and power issues with it. So you're going to get the full 500 watts out of it. This is an issue with power supplies. You can get cheap power supplies that don't perform as well, or you can get the real expensive ones that do. This is that, right? So the reason people were upset about that is because NVIDIA recommends you do 650 watts minimum for like a card like a 2070 or 3070. Sorry, it ships with a 3070, not a 2070. I'm screwing up here. So it's like the most modern, basically. But if you do the math on this, you combine the i7, maxing it out, and you combine the GPU, and you max out the wattage, you're still coming in well below 500 watts. And I've had no issues with it. Other people reviewing it have had no issues with it. If you go on Reddit, a lot of people have 500 watt systems and are putting in 3060, 3070 cards and having no issues because you do have headroom. Now, it's not a lot of headroom. So if you want to plug in a bunch of like RGB stuff into it, or you want to put in a 3080 card, you're going to have a problem there, right? You're going to hit a wall. This, though, does have like easy to upgrade components. You can upgrade the CPU if you want. You can upgrade the RAM. You can go to 64 gigs. I think you can go up to 128 even. You can add in more drives. So it is easy upgradable, but it is, there are limits you can do with this with that 500 watt power supply. Of course, I imagine you can also upgrade the power supply if you really wanted to. But you can game on this. I did do I thought it was funny, tweet this week talking about just because it has an RTX graphics card in it doesn't make it a gaming machine. I think for some reason, I get a lot of people buy these cards to game with. I understand that fully. I'm not ignorant about this stuff. I'm just saying there are non-gaming uses for graphics cards. For instance, video editors, photo editors, engineers, architects, CAD, CAM, artists, scientists, geologists. There are things like computational neurobiology. You can look it up. It's a real thing. People use graphics cards for heavy computing processing that is not necessarily gaming. Now, you can game on this. It plays games beautifully. It's not going to be as performative as a true gaming machine, like an Alienware Aurora, which is why Dell has the Alienware Aurora R11. That's the gaming machine version, right? So I want to make that clear. They're not positioning this for gaming, though you can gaming on it. But it doesn't have the gaming stuff that a gaming desktop would typically have. So this is built for the rest of the people in the world who do professional work with GPUs and stuff like that. I want this kind of machine. But it's kind of cool. I liked it. I thought it was kind of a fun desktop. It's very powerful. The pricing is pretty good. Yeah, I know. You can go build your own, probably cheaper and all that. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, some of us don't want to be bothered anymore building our own desktops. So this is for those people. Listen, that's a huge audience. A lot of companies are going to, if you work at an architect, agency, they're going to go maybe buy 5 of these for their employees or something like that. And that's what you get to work with. There's your assigned company computer. That's who this is for, right? So if you're looking for a cool desktop PC, go read that review. You can see I did a lot of nice photos. I opened it up. I showed all the ports. Oh, yeah, that's a good thing here. One advantage to this computer, which I really like, was it had a ton of front-facing ports. Because, I use a desktop, and actually, this is the Omen 30L I'm still using. It has a couple of front-facing ones. It has like 2 USB-As and a headphone, but that's it. This has an SD card, a full SD card slot, has 3 USB-As and a Type-C and the headphone jack. It basically has everything you'd ever need right there in the front. So you just reach out, plug something in. I mean, it's genius, right? This is, to me, one of the selling points. If you're a professional and you're working and you're always putting in your SD card because of your video, or you need a lot of ports, this is going to be kind of your device. So anyway, go check it out. I thought it was kind of cool. I do have, hopefully next week, the LG Gram 17 review finally coming. I got a bunch of stuff I got to finish. I do have the Dell 16x10 display review coming as well. Actually, I should have had that today, but whoops. I'll be doing that after the podcast, though. So, Zach, what should we look forward for next week for you? Do you have anything scheduled?
So I am currently working on a review of something called a Desk Size Pro, which I think it should be called Desk Bike because that's a better name for it. Oh. But essentially, I received today a bike. It's sort of like an at-home sort of exercise bike that has a desk built into it. So now I can troll on Twitter whilst working out. So yeah, I'll be reviewing that for Windows Central. I also am working on a review of this. This is the Origin Evo 15S, I believe. Has a RTX 3070 GPU inside, a 10th gen processor, but it's the 6-core one, I think. No, maybe it's the 8-core one. I can't remember. But yes, I'm reviewing that on Windows Central as well. Maybe not for next week because I still need to do quite a lot of testing with it and stuff. But that's up and coming. This is my first actual gaming laptop. So I'm excited about it.
Zach's getting immersed in the challenging, demanding world of laptop reviews.
That's really Listen, it's not easy, guys, especially if you have like a format you've got to follow and whatnot. It's lots of work. But this has a 300 hertz display. This is the first 300 hertz display I've ever used, and now I don't ever want to go back to anything else.
The Minecraft will be really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost easier writing reviews for a non-technical audience because then I've always joked about this, like the bigger the tech publication you go to, the less work you actually do because you could just go like, it was pretty fast when I played games on it. The display looked really nice. It seemed color accurate. Like you could just use those words where meanwhile, if I write that, people are like, yeah, how fast? How color accurate? Where's the DCI-P3 number on that? And so like, we actually have to do all the testing because otherwise people are going to yell at us for not doing it. So the more technical you get with your audience, the more work you actually have to do. And the Wall Street Journal, though, can just be like, it was kind of fast. And the battery lasted all day. No hours, just vagaries on there. Quick 2 things. Someone's pointing out Xbox, Microsoft Edge, and Xbox.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's in like skip ahead alpha. I think it's quite buggy right now. But yes, the Win32 version of Microsoft Edge now runs on Xbox, making it the first Win32 app to run on Xbox. But yeah, it's using the same tech as it does on Windows 10 X. I believe it operates via a shim, if I'm not mistaken.
And then also Sun pointed out, of course, I didn't mention, although I did mention in the comments about this, that yes, you can also use RTX 3070s for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining. Yes, that's a huge thing too. So yes, there are non-gaming uses for RTX cards, I swear. And just because a device has an RTX card does not make it a gaming device. They're very good
at video and stuff as well. Trust me, because I do video editing and rendering. They're very good at that.
Or AI. That's another big thing. I mean, that's a big use right now of RTX cards is AI development. Like if you work in AI, like you use RTX graphics cards because that's what NVIDIA is doing right now with them. So yeah, that's your little just gamers, man. Gamers. Like not everybody's an office drone that needs a little processor, and then you have gamers. Like there's a lot of people in between who also need this hardware, I swear. Anywho, that's going to wrap it up for this week for the podcast. We will do now a Q&A, so if we didn't answer your questions during the podcast, fire them off in comments, and we'll try to answer those. If you're listening to this live, recorded, of course, you don't get to hear that, but that's okay. You can join us every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube/Windows Central. You can also go there and watch the replays of the video if you want to actually see our faces for some odd reason. Follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and you can ask me questions there. You can also follow Zach at ZACBOWTEN. And of course, we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Great. So yes, questions. We'll answer them if we can.
See, I use RTX even for this podcast because NVIDIA broadcast.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's the one example that you didn't use.
I know, ironically, but it's if you like the blur in my video, that's RTX. If you like the fact that when I clap you don't hear anything, that's RTX. So yeah, it's not just gaming, people.
With Microsoft increasing its usage of AMD CPUs in the Surface line, do you see them using it on the next Surface Book? I don't. I think AMD will be Surface laptop only. I think Surface Pro will be Intel. Actually, well, it depends what they do with the book going forward. Because if they sort of align the book and the laptop, and then the book becomes a laptop Pro or a laptop 2-in-1, then I guess maybe. But I think Surface Pro will be Intel only. And then the Pro X will be ARM only. Laptop will be AMD, and I guess Intel is mixed in there. And then the Studio, I think, will also be in Intel only. Although I could be wrong about Studio, because AMD does have some nice desktop chips, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, AMD has actually very strong desktop chips.
Yeah, so... Although, as we all know, the chips inside the Studio aren't actually desktop chips, they're laptop chips.
Good point. Still, point stands. They could put an AMD 35-watt chips and be pretty impressive. Will Sun Valley come out in June for insiders?
I don't know if it will come out in June. I mean, as far as I'm aware, Sun Valley's not coming out until October, but you might start hearing about it officially in June or around sort of springtime.
July 4th. Brandon already has a drafted post.
Yeah.
It's going to be happy 4th of July, insiders. Today you get to try the Sun Valley stuff that was announced a few weeks ago.
Brad Sams was hinting at a new form factor Surface device in the fall. Do you know anything about that? I do not. I don't know anything about the fall when it comes to Surface. Hopefully it's a smartwatch of some kind.
Yes. It's funny. I was eyeing the Mi. Is that it? Mi have their new round watch, and then Xiaomi. It does a Xiaomi Mi, I think it was. I don't know. But a couple of the Chinese OEMs are doing some pretty good smartwatch stuff. I was like... But then I was looking at my watch collection. I'm like, nah, I can't do that.
I see nothing new, but as far as you know, still getting Android 11 on Surface Duo this summer. That's the last I heard. They are working on Android 11 for Surface Duo, and it will probably launch sometime this summer. Hopefully earlier rather than later, but I don't actually have an actual date for you, unfortunately. Do you see Microsoft releasing xCloud for Xbox as a PWA now that Xbox has proper Edge? No, I don't. I think xCloud will be an integrated part of the console experience eventually. But I think that's a ways away because I don't think it's a priority for them right now. Thoughts on the controversial issues of the week from Microsoft, Exchange Gate, User Voice Gate, and Invoke Gate? I'm not too familiar with Exchange Gate. I realized there was some security breach and maybe some data was stolen or something or other, but I've really not been following that story. User Voice Gate, I think we briefly mentioned in the show. It's a shame, but Microsoft clearly has its own solutions that they want to start using. And in Invoke Gate, we had a big discussion at the top of the show. Sad, but it's expected. So would you?
Yeah, I don't follow the Exchange stuff too much either.
Would you consider the Microsoft is no longer a consumer brand? I would say that they're less consumer than they were 10 years ago. I think
it's a weird statement because
Microsoft is so diverse in their product line. It's like some of Microsoft is very consumer. A lot of it isn't, admittedly, but there's definitely parts of it that shine in consumer spaces, such as Xbox. And I think even Surface to an extent. I know Surface is really sort of enterprise driven, but I think consumers know about Surface. I think Surface is a brand that people recognize as a premium PC line. So it's like there's parts of it that are consumer, but when it comes to things like Windows as a platform, and Office and all that stuff, I think that's very enterprisey stuff, and consumers really don't care about it. I think Microsoft is consumer focused in the same way that Dell or HP is consumer focused, in that for them, most of their earnings are made from enterprises buying all of their hardware and stuff. But people know about Dell and HP. Consumers do buy their products, but nobody has no consumers like, oh yeah, I love Dell. Dell's amazing. Dell's the best. There's no love for like Dell or HP or Microsoft in that way.
Yeah, it's a weird question because they make Windows, which is used on 80 to 90% of PCs, and we saw a huge uptick in usage of it. So it's like, and they make Xbox, which a lot of consumers use. So they power a lot of the stuff that consumers use. But one thing they backed away from is necessarily making products just as a consumer company, right? So you do have the Surface stuff, but even there, Surface is more meant to be like aspirational. Like, here's where we think, the pinnacle of what a Windows 10 device could be. But OEMs rightly have taken a lot of those ideas, run with them, and improved upon them, right? I've said before, like the Spectre X360 14 is kind of like it's kind of the perfect laptop in terms of a perfect Ultrabook, right? It really brings everything that they've been working on into one device, and it wasn't made by Microsoft. But it's only because of what Microsoft did that HP kind of makes that device. So they would rather be the indirect consumer company. They forget a lot of their technology, a lot of Azure, a lot of their AI stuff is now helping other companies build consumer products. And that's where they see themselves. And that's kind of, was Microsoft a consumer company in the 1980s and 1990s? No, if anything, they're returning to where they were in the 80s and 90s in terms of their role in technology, which is they're getting back to their roots, which is why everybody's been kind of happy about where Microsoft is. What they're not trying to be is Apple anymore.
Yes.
So.
Do you think the main Microsoft Store is going to be discontinued following the news that the business and education stores are being deprecated? No. I can only see that happening if Microsoft figures out a new system that allows inbox apps to be updated independently from the operating system. If that doesn't happen, then the Microsoft Store simply cannot go away. The Microsoft Store is vital to the Windows as a service experience, right? Without it, you don't get inbox app updates. The mail app that you installed a year ago will be the same mail app because it doesn't have an inbox updater. Microsoft could introduce all of these apps with their own updaters. That would be a pain in the backside. Who wants to go manually update every single app? Nobody. That's ridiculous. So no, I do not see the Microsoft Store going away for the general audience. Possible conflict between Xbox wireless headset and the new Surface headphones you mentioned on the show? I don't think so. I think they're different audiences. The Surface headphones don't even work on Xbox, so if you were looking for a set of headphones that work on Xbox, you wouldn't consider the Surface headphones anyway. And also from a design perspective, I think the Surface headphones look better. I'm a design-driven person, so I would prefer the Surface headphones. But I'm in that camp where I actually play games on Xbox as well, so I will have both. I've actually got mine pre-ordered. Mine should be here next week. I'm excited about that. Next Wednesday. Nice. Sony discontinued PlayStation Store movies and TV. Will Microsoft drop their movies and TV in the future? I don't think Microsoft would drop it only because Sony did. You have to remember that Sony's movies and TV service was specific to Sony consoles. There was no service where you could watch those same movies on your PC. The Microsoft Store's movie and TVs is universal. Well, to an extent. You can find it on Windows PCs, 1 billion devices, keep that in mind, as well as Xbox. And I think Microsoft may have more customers who have actually bought movies or rented movies through movies and TVs because of the PC component compared to Sony, who only had the console component. Got to remember, movies and TV isn't just an Xbox service.
Yeah, I don't. This is such a weird thing. Just because Sony dropped something doesn't mean Microsoft is eager to drop it too. I think it's a different revenue model than music. Music is very expensive in terms of streaming rights because if you remember with the pass, it was like $10 a month, and that got you licenses to the entire music catalog, no matter what you played. A rental is a one-to-one purchase. You're paying $4 for the rental, and you're getting the one movie. It's the same on every other system. And as Zach pointed out, the beauty is you can do this on Windows 10. So this is very useful. The best part about this system is you can rent a movie, download it, and take it with you on your laptop. Now you can do that with Vudu and I think Netflix even, but it's not quite the same in some places. So, but there's no indication that they're going to get rid of that stuff, and just because Sony was having a hard time.
And even if they did, they wouldn't take away your existing library. All they would do is disable the ability to buy new movies. Your existing library would always be with. They wouldn't take that away from you. And if they did, they better refund me for the, I think, thousands of pounds at this point I've spent on movies.
I've got a lot. I have a lot. When you count the TV shows, like when I sit on a new laptop, it's like 805 videos.
If I worked it out, I bet you I spent over £1,000 on movies through movies and TV.
Yeah, I always buy stuff on sale. That's why. And increasingly now, I get if it's with Movies Anywhere, because in the U.S. it's a big deal. So
yeah, which is US only.
Yeah, but then I'm double protected. So.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes, Kevin. We're where you can purchase too, not just rents. We, as we're just explaining, we both buy a lot of video. You both have the same microphone now. Which one is it? And any reason for that change? So this was mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast. This is the Quadcast S. So that has the cool glowy stuff on it. Basically, HyperX sent it to me. I asked them to because I'd like to kind of review it. I also, just because Zach was using the Quadcast and I liked the sound of his better than mine, and I figured it would make more sense if we're doing a podcast every week if we're both using the same hardware. We're both using the same camera after all. So for consistency, I figured it would be easier just to match. So that's why I contacted HyperX. I'm like, hey, we didn't review this new glowy version. If you want to send one over, I'll review it, and plus it'll help us with the podcast. So shout out to HyperX there. But we'll see if we keep it, right? I mentioned I still got to position it a little bit better and then get a pop guard on it and stuff like that. So it's still a work in progress. But honestly, it does look awesome. I called it it's a 2021 lava lamp for your desk if you want one. It's pretty awesome looking. So.
Is Windows 10X delayed? Yes, it was supposed to come out holiday 2020, and it hasn't. No. So the last time we sort of heard anything official was that Microsoft was hoping to get 10X out in the first half of this year. Now, that wasn't them saying that. They told us that in an interview back in May last year, I want to say, maybe a bit before that. So, I don't. They never sort of came out and said it's coming first half 2021. They sort of hinted that that's what they kind of was hoping to achieve to me and Dan when we had a conversation with them about it.
Well, breaking news.
What?
Jennifer Lopez and Alex Rodriguez break up. Sorry.
I hate you so much.
There.
Anyway, back to what I was saying before I was really interrupted. So I'm starting to hear that actually 10X may not be first half of this year, more likely second half at this point. But it doesn't matter because who cares? that's my answer. Nobody cares. You're not going to be buying a 10X PC this year, regardless of if it launches in the first half or second half. So it doesn't matter to you, and it certainly doesn't matter to me. So I really thought that was some big news there that he was about to reveal to us.
To some people, it is a big deal.
According to MSN.com, big news.
Between Apple and Microsoft and how their operating systems work, who do you think will have the most mass market with AR glasses start taking over?
It will be Apple.
Years? I mean, depends on it's different markets again. So Windows is and always will be the king in enterprise and business, and then as well as regular consumers, right? Apple definitely has an advantage with its own ecosystem, the iPhone. If you have an iPhone and the watch, I believe you already have 2/3 of that system, because then you put in glasses. I think they're going to all work together, and that's going to be their plan. That said, as I talked about last week during our Ignite broadcast, Microsoft is the only company right now making money on AR. They're the only company right now that has AR deployed in hospitals where surgeons are doing remote surgery using HoloLens. Microsoft is the only company that uses AR and sold it to the U.S. military to be used by soldiers. Microsoft's the only company that's using AR that has been sold to companies to use on product lines and for assembly and architects and designers. So there's a certain advantage that Microsoft has right now, which is it exists. It's being sold. People buy it. It's making Microsoft money. It's an ecosystem that is growing and being worked on by a lot of developers. They've actually built out the software platform and keep adding to it, whereas we haven't seen any of that from Apple yet, outside of what is available on iOS currently. So I do believe still Apple has the better hardware to bring it to the consumer level, but that doesn't make Microsoft's, what they're going to bring to it any less substantive. And as I already mentioned, it already exists and is being used. Someday you may actually go into a surgery and someone's going to use HoloLens. It won't be Apple, because that's happening today right now. So I think it's still a little bit up in the air, but that's kind of my answer. I think, Apple is definitely going to move there. In fact, there was a report yesterday about Apple suing a former employee over alleged leaks. And in there, I thought it was funny. I tweeted it out because they literally have a project called Project X. And it's supposedly these glasses that they've been working on for a few years, right? But how funny is that? Did they also, I joked, did they have manila envelopes with top secret stamped on it in red? People walk around in lab coats, klaxons that go off when you in the room. Project X, really? How would you, if you were going through their files, you worked there and you're like, what's this Project X?
Project X is, I pull that, that's the first file I pull for sure.
Yeah, some lame 80s movie. You back to this Project X. What's that? Yeah. It's like Black Saber, or Black Star. Is that the one from Star Wars? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, honestly, so, if I think about it, going back to the Andromeda codename, one of the reasons why it stood out to me was because it was Andromeda being a galaxy. So that's interesting. Yeah. And that's basically what got me. Is this the codenames, Microsoft and Apple? Stop using such alluring codenames.
It's true. It is kind of funny. Yeah, Project X. So maybe we'll see Project X someday, but I think that field is still early days. I'm more interested in what Microsoft's doing right now, just because they're actually building out the software and the architecture to support that stuff. They're doing that hard work right now. The hardware, we're still, I think, a couple of years away from being a reality. But who knows? The Surface team could come out of left field with a device here. We don't know. We simply don't know. And I'd be shocked if they're not thinking about this. Of how could they not when Alex Kipman's down the hall working on HoloLens? Like, did Panos not look at that stuff and be like, what could be a practical application for that for the Surface line? I got nothing. I don't think that's going to be a thing, So they have to have their own Project X, Project Y.
That's what they're asking. Why?
Yeah, but that's I mean, yeah, I don't know. I could see Microsoft coming out with something like that, right? And it being pretty far advanced, so.
Couple questions here. If the Surface Laptop 4 is coming out next month, what does Microsoft have left to release in the fall? Don't quote us on this, but a possible Surface Pro 8. I know the Pro 7 Plus just came out, but there's a reason why the Pro 7 Plus was aimed specifically at commercial markets, and it's because commercial markets don't care how often the product is refreshed, whereas consumers who just bought a brand new Surface Pro 7 Plus will probably be a bit miffed if in 10 months' time Microsoft announces a Surface Pro 8 with a new design. So that's why the 7 Pro, the Pro 7 Plus is commercial only. So to consumers, the last Surface Pro was still the Surface Pro 7 released in 2019. So the Surface Pro is overdue a new product at this point, and I believe the Surface Pro 8 with an updated design is on the cards for the fall. Surface Studio 3 also on the cards. That's overdue considerably at this point. I think it's the longest running Surface without a refresh. Oh no, maybe that's wrong, or maybe it will be by the end of this year. So yeah, I think the Surface Studio 3 is definitely up for a refresh as well. Surface Go 3 maybe, and Surface Duo 2. And the other question I had here was, where is it now? Why do you think Microsoft is so resistant to make Windows 10X available as an installable OS? I feel like ISOs would make it accessible to people tech savvy enough to understand what they're getting. It's not that they're resistant to it. It's that it's because of the way 10X is built. You cannot build it with an ISO. Like, you cannot just install it with an ISO. The way the image lays itself out on your hard drive or SSD is not how Windows Legacy does it. The ISO is essentially an installable version of Windows, whereas Windows 10X is not installable. It doesn't have its own installer. It has to the OS image is flashed onto a device, and that includes the partitions. Whereas when you install Windows from an ISO, you boot into a Windows setup environment. Then you install Windows and you can do your own partitioning, or if not, Windows will then partition inside the setup environment. 10X doesn't have that. There's no setup environment that 10X has. So yeah, only OEMs and Microsoft can flash these operating system images onto devices, or if you're tech savvy enough, you can do it yourself, which is what the 10X leak back in January was. The bits came out, you could build your own image and then you could flash it onto your device. It's not as easy as doing an ISO for sure, but that's the only way you can do it because that's how 10X is built. It's not that Microsoft just limiting it. That's just technically how it is. I did have another question, but I've lost it. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so there's a couple of questions about. So if 10X is delayed, do you reckon Win32 will be part of the product at launch? It depends how long it's delayed, but as far as I understand it, Microsoft wants a version of 10X without Win32 anyway. Windows 10X Cloud or Windows 10X Education, I can't remember what they're calling it internally, but essentially, I think there'll be different SKUs of 10X. So there'll be Windows 10X without Win32, and there will be Windows 10X with Win32. The question is, it depends on how long it's delayed. If it's delayed long enough, then I guess the version with Win32 could launch alongside the version without. But I think the plan originally was just to launch the version without first. So we'll have to wait and see.
Just realized, someone pointed out, we did forget to do the thing of the week.
Well, my thing of the week was the desk spike anyway, so.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sorry. We'll return next week. I don't think I had one anyway. Actually, mine would just be like spring. The sun is out and the temperature is getting nice finally.
Okay, I will skip
Google
Surface.
attacked Micro.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Google attacked Microsoft in the news for breaking web standards. I didn't read that. Any comments on this? Impact on collaboration with Android? The collaboration, you have to remember, they're not children. Um, one part of Google can criticize Microsoft, and I'll have no material impact on the Android thing. They're not gangs, and they're like, oh, did you hear Jimmy doesn't like that? And they don't break up like that. So it's like just because they publicly criticize doesn't mean the other deal and the other partnerships fall apart. These are big boy companies, and they're different divisions. If you work on the Android thing and you're working with Microsoft, you kind of don't care about the web standard guys and what their beef is.
Yeah.
That's like, because why would you, right? When you work in a department and you hear another department has an issue, like, do you really care? You're like, sucks to be you, whatever. Doesn't affect. I have a job to do. I'm going to continue making money and do what I think is right, right? So that's how these companies operate. They're not like trying to destroy each other. But they can kind of criticize each other publicly without jeopardizing these deals. I don't see any issue there, but I'll look up about the web standard thing. I didn't see that yet.
Yeah, I just want to say someone was saying, okay, I'll skip Surface Laptop 4 and wait for Studio 3. One, those are very different products, so why you would skip one and wait for the other is beyond me. But two, don't take our word for this, okay? I don't want you waiting 10 months for Microsoft to not actually announce anything in December or October or whatever. So, take it with a grain of salt. Live life in the now. If you want the Surface Laptop 4, get the Surface Laptop 4. And then
MacBook M1 unable to support Boot Camp for Windows OS. Yes, it's not inconceivable that could change. It's not some bizarre technical limitation that can't be overcome. But as of right now, that is the case. So there's no point. I mean, you can still technically run Windows on it. There's a way. I haven't tried yet. There's a way to do it. I don't think you're going to get the best value. The MacBooks, listen, the M1, you'll get a good processor and good battery life. The display's kind of okay, but you don't get any pen, inking, touch support. You don't get advanced Windows features for plug and play stuff. So there are definitely trade-offs there. I got to do more on that, but.
Right, a couple more questions, then it's time to head off, I think. So if you have any questions, get them in now. This is your last chance. Forever. We're cancelling the show. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Get our Fridays.
Yeah, your Friday's back. Listen, I'm here at 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night. Not that I could go anywhere,
Luckily,
but still.
I know. We're in the pandemic. So.
We should move these to Thursdays.
Could. But then I feel like there's a lot of times stupid news happens on Friday.
It's true. You're not wrong, yeah.
The Friday 5 p.m. news dump.
Yeah. All right, it doesn't look like there's any more questions. Who will get the COVID vaccine first? Zach in the UK or Dan in the US? Listen, as soon as I'm offered it, I'm taking it.
Yeah, but who do you think will actually get it first?
I don't know.
I mean, it's not like.
Well, you're older than me.
I think I don't qualify that. I'm not that old. I don't qualify for it. By the way, did you watch the South Park?
I did not.
Special this week?
I didn't know.
That should have been I'll share a photo in our Telegram that sums up the episode. I think in a lot of ways.
Does your area have like an estimated sort of when they expect to have offered everyone the vaccine?
Yes, I believe mine is going to be in April.
Oh,
but
really? Okay.
I don't know because Biden just announced yesterday that all states, he's instructing them to offer the vaccine for everyone on May 1st.
Jesus.
Regardless.
So I don't think mine's until the end of June. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they've really cobbled together a bunch of
crazy
getting the distribution ramped up, and so May 1st, technically everybody should be able to try to get one. Whether that's the case or not, who knows?
Yeah. But. Anyway, I think it's time to say goodbye. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next Friday, as always. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.